What's up, family? It's your boy Daniel James II, and I'm your host right here on Black Voices on the Hill. Black Voices on the Hill is a podcast and radio show for the culture. We center Black lives, we amplify Black stories, and enhance the Black experience at Cornell University, Greater Ithaca, and beyond. Black Voice on the Hill topics range from racism, police brutality, and colorism, sexism to Greek life, leadership, and white elitism in the Ivy League. Black Voice on the Hill envisions a Cornell that's sensitive to the plight of its Black students, aware of the Black excellence in its college town, and unabashed about them changing the world. We see Black excellence, and we believe in Black empowerment, and we love the Black experience. Listen, Black Voice on the Hill is brought to you by WVBR News. To see when more new and upcoming episodes and for other Cornell and Ithaca news, be sure to follow at WVBR FM News on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or visit us at our website at wvbr.com/Black Voices. Subscribe, leave us a rating or review of this episode. I know you're gonna love it. Be sure to listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple, Overcast, and tune in right here on WVBR 93.5 every single week, every Friday at 2 p.m. and the podcast releases on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Listen, y'all, I have a very special guest in the studio today. I haven't had somebody that was this special in a while, just because I don't know, we're both South Carolinians. It's just perfect, right? So as many of you know, I interned this past summer for the office of U.S. House Majority Whip, Mr. James E. Clyburn. And of course, he's been on the platform as well. But this young woman I have on the show today, we call him boss, but to be honest, she was my boss under boss. I have none other than a legislative assistant, right? Nkili. Okay, legislative assistant. She's been through so many rings of this office, so I had to see what she is now. But she's legislative assistant. I have Miss Nkili Gause. Say hello to the people, Nkili.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here with you all. Daniel said it's an honor that he has me, but I find it an honor that he is asking me to do this. I was like, you interviewed the boss. Now you want to interview me? That is a hard act to follow. But I will do my best not to disappoint.
I know you won't. And she's being very humble, you guys, but she is absolutely amazing. She was sort of my point person. I can truly say that because of, it was a great office. I would say in particular because of Nkili, like her leadership just made my experience so much better. It was a great experience, and I have just gained so many skills from it. And it truly felt like home away from home for a little bit. I spent home July, August, just tears. I was like, wow, this was awesome. I want to check in with you though, Nkili, and just ask, how have you been? Is the coffee still being made in the mornings? Are the memos still getting done? How's it going on in the office and everything like that?
Yes. So, the last couple of months have been extremely busy with appropriations and reconciliation and all of these various things going on in our, climate here on the Hill, as well as out, across the nation. But yes, the coffee is still being made. As you can see, it is coffee time for me. I have my lovely, going to give out a nice little shout out to my alma mater, Francis Marion University, because I know that I'm going to need this extra boost to get through the rest of the day. So yes, the coffee is still being made. We are coming in every day, doing everything that we can to push, the democratic agenda forward and ensuring that we are helping the American people to the best of our ability. So we are in here.
Absolutely. Now, I want to just ask, you talked about appropriations and things of that nature. I want to ask, aside from, funding, I don't know, just as a staffer, what does that look like in terms of, because what people don't know is like, there are a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds on the Capitol Hill, like a lot of young people. They may not be the congressperson, but there are a lot of young people that do a lot of the legwork. What does that legwork, like hour-wise, look like for you? And how do you process doing all of that? And just because, as well as you helping to push this funding, right? It's possible you could also be a recipient of it because you're an American just like us as well. So
Yes, no, I completely understand. I think for me, I came in as a staff assistant at the beginning of 2019, the beginning of the 116th Congress. Then I moved to LC and was over our mail program, and now I'm in LA, and so I help to, get legislation drafted, do talking points, help to, navigate, different bills and things of that nature that fall under my policy wheelhouse, for lack of a better term. So for me, a lot of my days look like, meetings with stakeholders and organizations to hear their, political agendas and things of that nature, and how our office can potentially be of assistance to them, or how they can serve as resources for us as well. So lots of meetings, lots of discussions with like the committees and things of that nature. Sometimes, meetings with the current administration or different, department agencies. I'm speaking with the Department of Education later, about, some questions in regards to some work that they're currently looking to do that we're excited about. So it's just basically a lot of meetings. As you said earlier, lots of memos, So I think, but I enjoy it. I think one of my favorite parts of my job is having that opportunity to interact with so many people. I enjoy meeting new people, hearing about the great work that they're doing, not only down in South Carolina, but across the nation. I enjoy hearing good things, and I enjoy hearing about how the work that we are doing here is helping others.
absolutely. Um, she talked about those what was that was memos and things like that. It's and we'll talk about your education. We'll have like your specialties a little bit later. But you already shouted out, Francis Marion and stuff, and so I know I introduced you, but I want you to, sort of introduce yourself. I'm from Marion, South Carolina, and Nkili's from Loris, which is
Uh,
not too far from Myrtle Beach, right?
Not too far at all.
But-
My mom is very adamant about me telling people that I'm from Loris, South Carolina, and not Myrtle Beach, because she did not raise. She tells me that she didn't raise me in Myrtle Beach, and people need to know that. So I am from Loris, South Carolina. It's a relatively small, country-ish town. It is home to the annual bog off for chicken bog. You guys should try it. That's amazing. It's about 30 miles from Myrtle Beach. I attended Green C. Floyd's elementary, middle, and high school. And as I stated earlier, I am a graduate of Francis Marion University in Florence, South Carolina. It's a smaller liberal arts school. My undergraduate degree, surprisingly, is not in it's not in public, like in government relations or any poli-sci or anything of that nature. It's actually in sociology with a criminal justice concentration. I have a very unusual, I guess, path to the Hill. I interned in the congressman's office during undergrad, and I didn't necessarily think I'd be back on the Hill. I had an extremely amazing experience interning in our office back in 2015. And I tried to create that same experience for our interns as well. And so when we were transitioning back to the majority for the 116th Congress, I was offered the opportunity to come back as a staff member, and I graciously hopped up and moved my entire life up here in about 2 weeks, and I regret nothing.
Oh wow. Now, listen, my thing is you started this is 20 what year did you say again? You said
2019,
29.
January 2nd, 2019.
2019. Okay. So, but you also interned in his office for the first time. That was while you were still at FMU, right?
Yes, I interned in 2015. I went back to South Carolina. I worked at the Governor's School for Arts and Humanities for almost 3 years before I returned to DC for this position.
Okay. And at the time, he was a minority, right? He was in the minority.
Yes, when I was an intern, we were in the minority. He was the assistant Democratic leader, and so coming back and being in the majority was a completely different experience than when I was here and we were in the minority leadership. I mean, either way, the name holds weight and it is a
Right.
great responsibility. But coming back and being in the majority was very eye-opening for me. The staff was larger, the offices were larger. I was a lot more involved as a staff member than I was as an intern. And so I am thankful for, the opportunities I've been allotted with this experience of being in the majority.
Absolutely. Now, Nkili, now we're both Southerners
Oh,
and
yes, through and through.
through and through. And we know as much as, we love the food. Listen, that was one of our bonding things. We bonded over food, y'all.
Yeah. You're like,
But
what are some places that you like? And I think the first 3 or 4 places that I listed were just restaurants. And I was like, you probably want to experience things outside of food, but I feel like the majority of places that I told you should visit were food places.
no landmarks, y'all. No
The
landmarks.
landmarks, like just the food, like that's all you need. Like forget the Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial. You need to go get this food.
Go get the food. And I think that's a classic Southern thing to do because that's what we do. We love to eat. But alongside that, like you also know as a Southerner the political climate of the state that we live in, and just how did I guess being raised in the South and then being educated at liberal arts school, how did your major and just your knowledge of your state, how did it inform? I guess I really want to know your radicalizing moment where you came to be like, dang, there are like deep rooted issues in South Carolina, and I sort of want to be a part of that process, of changing that.
Yes, so I think for me, I've always known that and seen it growing up in South Carolina. And I do also want to say that these opinions that I am sharing are my personal opinions, not the opinions of the congressman or the office that I work for. So just starting with that, I think growing up in South Carolina, I saw, the racism that existed in our state even to this day. And I know a lot of people will say that it's not an issue anymore, it's not a thing anymore, but even just like small things growing up that you notice and that you see your classmates being treated differently or being allotted more opportunities. I tell people all the time, like it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that being told that I was pretty for a Black girl wasn't an actual compliment. Like the way that I thought it was when I was growing up, I was like, oh, thanks. But then I was like, why can't I just be pretty?
Yeah.
And so just kind of that environment growing up, especially growing up in a relatively like rural area. So a lot of farmer families, a lot of generational wealth in like the white communities, but not necessarily the Black communities. I am thankful for, my parents. My mom was a teacher. My dad is now retired, but he also did teaching and some manufacturing work when I was younger. When I was really young, he was like he was over a KFC, which means I was over a KFC, but very business mindset growing up. But I'm thankful, that they, did their best to help guide us. I have a younger brother. We're about 7 years apart. And so he experienced a lot of the same things. And you don't realize until you get out of that environment just the impact that it can have on you. I was not necessarily targeted, but I definitely have been called some names that, I won't say on here, or, I've had issues, or I had issues with like certain students who, were intimidated by me. And so they tried to tear me down to build themselves up. So I think the first time when I originally came to DC as an intern, it was like jaw dropping and shocking to see such a different culture, and to see other Black people here on the Hill. I think we have, continued to increase in numbers. I am a proud member of the Congressional Black Association here on Capitol Hill. And I just love that experience that I've had the opportunity to network with other, Black staffers and interns here on the Hill. And so it was like amazing for me to see those things when I came here as an intern, to see people who looked like me, who wanted to work on behalf of the state that we all love very dearly, but recognize that there are such hatred that is just sewn into the fabric of our state. I think we can see that in the way that different, situations are handled with schools, with healthcare, with access to resources and funding and things of that nature that we see, across the state. And it doesn't make us love it any less because, I have many great memories, growing up in South Carolina. Most of my family is there, and of course, I love them. But there are definitely, I think, issues that we see that people aren't ready to talk about or address. And because of that, it's hard for us to really move forward because we're not taking accountability.
So good. So good. So many things to hit on what you said because I think your first encounter, I guess, with racism being like in an educational setting. And I think sometimes about the ways in which I also experienced that was my first also experience with it, but I think it was a lot more institutional. I think one thing that was a saving grace was you talked about your mom being an educator. My mom, sort of raising me as a university kid, also at Francis Marion, uh, there were things like I think about even just something as simple as SAT, right? Which we know to be very biased and to be skewed towards like white, upper
Yep.
middle class interests. I am neither of those things. But because I had a mom that worked at, a university, I could go to the SAT camp at a reduced price or no price at all, and could get prep or I could just be around different faculty that had, access to different resources or like send them to an IB program at Williams or do this, at Wilson. And I think that in and of itself, even though I didn't have the financial capital, that social capital meant a lot for a Black kid. And even then, there were still gatekeeping teachers in these school districts and just said, you sure you want to go there, to that school or pursue that? I mean, that's kind of hard. Like, are you sure you can handle it? Granted, I was at an A in your class. What makes you think I can't, but it's the doubting. And I'm grateful that you were able to press past all of those things to be who you are today. And Keely, tell us though how you already talked about, being an African American or Black person on a staffer. Just tell us, how do you feel that though, before we get to that, how sociology and a criminal justice, minor, how's that informed political work? I see the direct, I guess, correlation, but some may not. So how does that correlate?
So, a lot of times people don't necessarily know what sociology is. So, generally speaking, sociology is the study of groups of people. And so I, have a background in doing research on different, large groups of people, whether it's like race or gender based. And so I think bringing that knowledge in and then also having more of a criminal justice, concentration has helped kind of steer some of my ideas about different topics in that realm as well, because I've seen the data about how, these issues disproportionately affect people who look like me. And so I think not only because, um, I am a Black woman. I wake up every day, and that is who I am. And that is something that I cannot change, nor would I. Um, I think having that experience and recognizing how, these issues affect people who look like me pushes me even more. These are things that I feel like I would care about no matter what, but seeing it over and over and over again, I think reinforces me to really push to make changes in that realm. Um, because I tell people all the time, like one of my least favorite things for people to say to me is, what about Black on Black crime? Because that to me, as a sociology major, I know that most violent crimes are intraracial. You are more likely to be killed by someone that you know. And Black people happen to know more Black people, but we rarely hear about white on white crime or Hispanic on Hispanic crime, Latinx versus Latinx crime. So we don't talk about those things. And oftentimes when people are bringing up Black on Black crime, it's in the realm of excusing like violence that has been perpetrated against Black people from a place of hate. And that to
State
me
violence.
cannot
Right.
cannot be explained, you
Right.
know? And so to say, well, like, yeah, this happened, but Black people kill Black people all the time. It's like, well, yeah, because that's how things work. Like, if you know other Black people and you're more likely to be killed by someone you know, it would make sense that Black people would, generally speaking, kill or harm other Black people.
Right.
But the same stands for all other races. It's not just a Black, it's not just a problem for Black people.
That's right.
It's just a problem in general. And so it can't be used as an excuse to justify unnecessary violence against Black people.
Absolutely. State violence is different from interracial violence, very much so. The state does not get to do that. And it's also as if to say, because this was one of the conversations I feel like we had this summer it's as if to say there have not been, people that have spoke out against, you know, um, gang violence in our communities or that don't stand up for,
Mhm.
Black kids getting killed by other, Black kids, or if there's not a care for, we care about both. We care about both. Number one, cops should not be able to kill us, but also we should love each other, ourselves as well. We care about that as well. And I think that those are two separate conversations. I think there's always been organizations for gun violence in general. So I think that that's a mute argument. It's almost it's a mute argument.
No, I completely agree, because my thing is also in that realm when people are saying, well, what about Black on Black crime? I said, if Tommy goes out here and shoots Ray, Tommy is more than likely going to go to jail for that, So, Ray's family is going to get that justice. And so that's another piece of it that I think people don't take into consideration when they, try to say that, well, Black people are out here killing Black people. The majority of those Black people are going to go through the criminal justice system, and they are going to be placed in prison.
Process.
The problem is, on the other side of that conversation, we've seen time and time again where police officers have, murdered Black people, Black and brown people, and they receive no jail time. They usually will receive paid leave, and Tommy's not getting that, and so it's just not even the same scale of accountability within the criminal justice system.
Accountability, that's the key word. As y'all can see, this is one of Nkili's what they call policy areas. That's one of Nkili's policy areas, along with women's reproductive rights, I think, and education as well. So she's just that's the go-to person. You have point people in the office to go to, and this is the person you can go to for that. I want to ask though, like, take a minute and just flag this, because I saw it in the news yesterday. Kamala Harris, of course, came out of, I think, a U.S. Senate meeting maybe, and of course there were like sweeping voting laws and across many southern states to disenfranchise voters after the election in 2020. Was that 2020? Yeah,
Mhm.
2020. And in states like Texas. And so the For the People Act has a more updated version that is called the Freedom for the People Act, or what's it called?
Yes, I
Freedom.
think so.
I
Yes, I
think
think
it's I
that's the
think it's something like
current
that.
title for it.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? Because they were unable to put it into the filibuster. So they're still stalled on that sweeping legislation, which would override a lot of the racist, Texas laws. What are your personal thoughts as a black woman, just as a staffer? What are your thoughts about that?
I think what we've seen in the voting space, last year was an incredibly hard year for our entire nation and the world in general. But we were actively trying to respond to that in a way that allowed people to continue to vote. That should be a basic human right. I personally think that people should automatically be eligible to vote. Like they should just be registered as soon as they turn 18. But that's just my personal opinion. I think having to, make sure that you have all these voter ID laws and things of that nature. We have historically seen time and time again that, our nation trying to um, stop Black and Brown people from voting and expressing their opinions and, allowing them to vote the way that they want to
Right.
or really contribute to our democracy in that way. And so, like you said, we've seen states, we were recounting votes for 100 years. I feel I felt like I woke up every couple of days and I was finding out that Joe Biden was our president because another state had recounted their votes and reconfirmed what we
Right.
already knew. So I think, I am hopeful that we can get this bill, completed and passed and signed into law because people should have that right to voice their opinions, to vote in the people that they want to see, people who look like them, people who don't look like them, people who are really pushing for their views and their ideas and their beliefs and their morals, so on and so forth. And so I think it hurts me to see so many people being disenfranchised from doing their basic due diligence of voting for the people that they want to represent them. You can't have, a representative party when there are huge populations of people who aren't able to put their votes in. You can't represent me if I can't vote for you. Like, how
Right.
are you knowing what is important to me if I'm not allowed to express those things? And so I'm hopeful that we'll be able, to undo some of these harmful voting, restrictions that have been placed in a lot, as you said, a lot of the southern states that we see.
That's so true. What's so funny too is that most African Americans, most black people still live in the South. And yet we have these policies, these representation that's still just not reflective of who we are, like who the South, how colorful the South actually is. And it's been like that for a long time. And it's not just reflected in the voting and the gerrymandering, right? But it's also represented in Capitol Hill in the way sometimes the offices. I can go to Congressman Clyburn's office and see so many black faces. I can see. I mean, it's just beautiful, right? And a beautiful just show of diversity across the board. And you'll be like, "You from South Carolina?" "Yeah, I'm from South Carolina, South Carolina." And you also get people that are not, but it's like, wow, we really represent the state. Whereas, I can go to other South Carolina offices and that not be the case. It's just very, Carolina girl shirts, just it's very not representative, to leave it at that. How does being an African American and a woman, those staffer, how important is representation? You talked about being a member of, CBAA. And I think that that's such a critical. The group chat is critical. I know that, and everything. So tell us about just the importance of representation as a staffer too. Yeah.
I think, when I came as an intern, it was like I was excited to see other people who looked like me. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. I know that in the 116th Congress, we had the most diverse Democratic Party that we had ever seen before, race wise, age wise, just across the board. And that was so beautiful to me as a staff member. But I think, we, our views, our work is so important. And so, I feel like I said before, how can you know the ideas, the thoughts, the experiences of your constituents if you don't have people who look like your constituents, within your office, helping to advise you, helping to lead you, helping to guide you? I think it's important, for interns on the Hill to see people who look like them. That was a major thing for me. I was like, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't a poli-sci major, and I, was placed in the congressman's office and I didn't know what to expect. I was not very well knowledgeable about, government in that aspect. And so having people who looked like me, who could help guide me, and give me tips and, stuff of that nature, was major. And so I think a lot of times for, kids, especially growing up, we aren't necessarily taught that these are things that we can do. We, are told, as you said earlier, like, oh, that's really big. Like, do you think you can do that? Do you think you should apply to that school? That's like a really hard school to get into. We're taught to limit our ideas of what we're capable of. And I don't like that. And so I think having the opportunity to be the face of a Capitol Hill staffer is a major flex, and not in the respect that, I do this for clout or I am boastful about it. It's more so from the position of wanting to show other, Black and brown kids that, a girl from small country Lower South Carolina can make it to Washington, D.C., can work in the, third top Democratic office in the House of Representatives, can be working to try to, be the change I want to see, impact the change that I want to see, because we aren't told those things. Many of us aren't told those things, or we aren't shown those things, and we're not encouraged to pursue those avenues. I'm thankful, that my advisor in undergrad was like, hey, you should apply for this, Washington semester program. And I was like, okay. And now here I am, some years later. But a lot of people don't have that. They, like you spoke earlier, even if you didn't have like the financial capital, you had the social. And so a lot of our, people who look like us don't have that. And so I'm thankful that I have the opportunity to show little girls and little boys who look like me that it can be done. And I think when we come together, we are able to show people that we are a growing population on the Hill. We are here to stay. We recently were, in the newspaper, the New York Times, but while, to say that, yeah, some Black, Hill staffers are leaving, but the ones of us that are here, we are ready to impact change. A lot of us, experienced January 6th differently than others and stuff. It was a horrible day for all. But I think for us, we were like, look, we have been experiencing a lot of this hatred, our entire life. So we know what this looks like. We know what this feels like. This, on an emotional and a mental, capacity impacts people differently based on past experiences, So I think, having been called the N word when I was younger, growing up and stuff like that, or, the both the covert and the overt experiences of racism, that were sprinkled throughout my upbringing, has definitely impacted the way that we view and we grow and we learn. But it also impacts the way that we push to educate and implement change.
That's super good. I think that I'm so glad you're there to stay as well. I think that your presence is so needed, and she's not just there, y'all. She's doing like great work as well. Because there's a lot of people that are there, but she's doing great work, and I love that. Nkili, you already opened it up. So when I say January 6th, as a staffer that went through that, what are your thoughts or what are memories or things that you can share that come to mind?
Now, I will be honest, and never, not everyone's a religious person. I am.
Right.
By the grace of God, I was out of the office that day. Just I, had traveled and I was waiting. We're required to get COVID tests every so often, and so I was waiting for my results, so I couldn't return to the office. But it definitely was very much so like a survivor's guilt type thing where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not there with my, these are people that I care for. These are people that I see, more than I see my family. Like I see these people more frequently than I see my own family and sometimes my friends as well. So to see, I was, texting and then people weren't responding anymore. And so just the uncertainty of not knowing what was happening, not knowing what they were experiencing was extremely, extremely hard in its own way. And I think people also have to realize that we still had to come back to work. So even though I wasn't there that particular day, I still had to come back to an office and a workplace where I felt that I was probably in the safest place that I could be, or one of the safest places in the District of Columbia. And that was taken away on that day. That sense of safety and security, it just was never the same because then we were putting up these large fences, and you were consistently worried about, would there be another round or, would something else happen? And so that takes time, and even now, many months later, that still lingers for many of us. I've spoken to, other Black members, other staff members, other Black staff members, sorry. We still feel the shock waves of that. For many of us, we never imagined that something of that nature could take place here. And so that sense of, safety and security was kind of taken away from us, and to see, the depths of how far people will go in the name of hatred, or as they like to call it, patriotism, is absolutely, horrifying.
It is horrifying. And I think survivor's guilt is more real than we want to acknowledge. But I pray that God heals that, because I think that it was so much outside of our control. It's almost like, are you seeing this? Are you watching this? What is going on? Just as somebody that was watching it from home, trying to, see this. So I'm very grateful though that by the grace of God, you're still here, and all the staff is still here as well. And I hope nothing like that happens again or in the future. I think that truly time will tell. I just want to ask you, because you talked about one of your policy areas is education. So, and I remember we had this conversation. I was like, what you want to do after maybe in the future, uh, do you want to give up the Stafford privilege? I mean, listen, I had trouble handing in my badge, on the last. I was like, this gets me everywhere. Stop. So, do you want to do that and just, pursue education full time? Like, what's the plan? I guess thoughtfully, I guess I don't want to get you in trouble with your job because they'd be like, oh, Nkili leaving. But in the future, it's just reality. Yeah.
No, I feel like my office is, mostly aware that, I love the work that I do here on the Hill. I have a heart for, education specifically, growing up in a home with a teacher. And so education has always been very important to me. I think, I have seen the discrepancies in education across the states. And I, have experienced it. Like, I'm public school, raised. And while I am greatly appreciative of the education that I received, I recognize that there are a lot of changes that could be made to improve our educational systems, not only in South Carolina, but across the nation as well. I do eventually, want to go back to school and pursue my master's. I think when I was in undergrad, I caught the higher ed bug. And so my desire is to, eventually maybe work at like a college or university in student affairs, something of that nature, or, Lord willing, maybe one day working at the Department of Education, so who knows? But I do know that I love all of the policy issue areas that I work on in our office, but I definitely have a heart for education. I love the work that we are doing. I love, the work that we've done in the past, that we'll continue to do. But I think, at some point, and I think one of the things that I love most about where I am is that we definitely have the type of office culture that once you're a member, you're always a member. Like we're like a family. And so once you're a team member, you're always a team member. So I am hopeful that, if I did one day decide to leave the Hill, go back to school, pursue my master's or doctorate, that I'd always have a home where I am.
That's beautiful. I can see that culture. I definitely can see that as being a culture of the Hill. Love that. Uh, and just, best prayers, thoughts are with you as you continue your education and journey forward. I can't wait to see what we get out of it. Kaylee, maybe Secretary of Education. You don't know
Oh
what's
no.
next for her. You never know.
You never know.
Listen, this is how I want to end the show. If I'm, let's just say I wasn't from South Carolina and I came to the PD or I came to Horry County or I came to anywhere near the beach or whatever, our area, right? Where do I go to eat?
Oh, wow, that is a good question. So I'm like, um, if we knew each other, like, I'm gonna say you can come to the cookout. Like, I'm gonna say you can come to the cookout because I feel like Southern cooking is a delicacy. I am thankful that my family members have taught me something something here and there. I'm definitely not at the level of some of my family members. I hope to one day be at that level, but I definitely would say you gotta come to the cookout. But I think for me, just like fast food wise, places that I always try to go to when I am in South Carolina, Waffle House is a staple. Like there's not a lot of Waffle Houses up here in the DMV, y'all, and it's a travesty. Cookout because like the cookout, the restaurant cookout, because also not a lot of those in the DMV areas. You guys, if y'all are coming up here, be prepared. If y'all are from the South and y'all are coming up here, you're going to have to travel to get to these locations, right? They're not everywhere. Zaxby's, also not a lot of them up here either. So anytime I am going home, those are some of the places where I'm like, I need to get here, like immediately. Like if we're passing a Waffle House, like I know that's how I know that I'm getting further south when I'm traveling home is when I start seeing Waffle Houses on the exit signs. I'm like, I'm going in the right direction. Like, I'm in Waffle House territory now. But I just feel like, because people are like, who have never experienced Waffle House, they're like, I don't like, it's like the food's super good. And I'm like, yeah, the food's good. They're like, oh, do they have like good customer service? Or like, is it like a fancy establishment? I'm like, no, it's not fancy, but the food is always going to be good. The price is always going to be different for some reason. You know, the cook may be arguing with the server, but it's okay. It's okay because the food is always going to be bomb. So those are just a couple more like fast food type, you know, restaurant places that I feel are Southern staples that aren't in, you know, areas up here. So I do miss those.
That's so good. Listen, if you come with me, you can go to all those places. Waffle House, you know, I love Waffle. Listen, go to Waffle House before you go to Huddle House. That's for sure. But I think for sure. But you know, Waffle House is such a I think of it as like a late night place. And I never really, you know, I never really been. I'm not grown enough to do that yet. But I think I like I would agree with all those places. If you come to South Carolina, one thing I noticed, you know, Southern fried chicken is a very, you know, it's a, you know, of course, Southern staple. But even more than that, fried fish is a staple. And so
Yeah,
if I take you with me,
always.
you come at the
Shrimp and
fish house.
grits.
I know Laura's got a good.
I stand by that, like shrimp and grits. If you can get good shrimp and grits in South Carolina, go. Like I said, I'm from Loris. We have chicken bog, which is like rice and chicken and sausage, and it's flavored and it's amazing. And we, like I said, are home of the annual bog off. And so Loris, South Carolina is known for their chicken bog. And so it's kind of like a staple where I'm from. It's delicious. I highly recommend it. The bog off is always in October. So if you ever, you know, happen to be traveling down to like the Myrtle Beach area or somewhere like that in October, try to go on Chicken Bog Festival weekend so you can slide through Loris on the way to the beach.
God knows. I want to go because I've never been to that in Lawrence, but I'd love to go to that. Godly. But no, the fish, the thing about the fried like food, like foods like that, like chicken
fried fish and grits.
God bless. God bless, honestly. That's so
As
good.
you can see, we are really big food people.
And it's almost like a love language, almost. It's like if they pick up fish from the fish market and come home and fry it, it's like, are you serious?
Fish is like food is a love language for me.
God,
like
it really
I'm
is.
like, you know, quality time and food. Like
Absolutely.
I'm good to go. I think that's the Southern gal in me. I'm just like, feed me good food and I will always be happy.
So good. Listen, this is a Southern gal y'all have heard today. This has been amazing, Nkili. Give us any parting words you have. You want to shout out anybody back home, anything like that before you get back to your work. But yeah.
Well, first things first, I want to thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to, you know, do this with you. I am extremely honored. I also want to encourage everyone to, you know, lift your voice. Don't allow people to silence you or mute you. Don't allow people to put you in a box. Or allow them to tell you that your dreams and aspirations are too big because theirs are too small. Always, you know, go for what you want in life. Also, go for things even if you don't think that you qualify. I know that imposter syndrome is so prevalent, I think, in the Black community that we often feel like, oh my gosh, like, could I do that? Like, do I have, you know, the qualifications to apply for that job? Do I have the qualifications to, pursue that degree? But I say go for it, because you miss all the shots that you don't take, and you'll never feel the breeze if you're too afraid to open the window. So just always continue to push towards your goals, and don't allow yourself to also put you in a box, because I think that we sometimes do that ourselves, because other people are going to apply for that job whether or not they're qualified. So you should always apply to anything that you want to do. And so I think those are just. Oh, also, my mom always says that everyone has a purpose, a place, and a plan, and that our life's journey is just to find those things. And sometimes they change as you continue on your journey. So if you don't necessarily feel like you are where you're supposed to be, know that, or believe that you are where you're currently supposed to be, but that doesn't mean that that's your final destination.
Whew. Mama drops gems, huh? She drops gems, bro. I love it. I love
So
it.
thankful for.
That's right. A Southern mama will drop gems. I know that. So don't live a life full of shoulda, couldas, wouldas. Is that's what I'm hearing? Don't live a life
Basically,
full of-
yes.
Basically. Okay.
Yes.
Listen, y'all. Today I've had Nkili Gause, Miss Nkili Gause. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us, Nkili. Listen, to see when more new and upcoming episodes of Black Voices on the Hill. For other Cornell and Ithaca news, be sure to follow us at Black Voices on the Hill on Instagram. Nkili, I know that you're a public official. And so, they may not be able to follow you on Instagram and Facebook, but how can they stay in touch with you? I presume LinkedIn or something like that.
No, you definitely, can follow me. I, am also happy to, let me see. I feel like Facebook is probably one of the places, or Instagram. We'll do Facebook. You can find me on Facebook at Nkili. It's just Kili, Gause, Gause. So feel free to follow me. Also, if you ever have like any political questions, Daniel knows how to get in contact with me. Always happy to assist in any way that I can. My email address is like, my work email address is relatively like common knowledge. Like you can just look it up online. So I also am happy to provide that as well. It's my first name. So Nkili, Nkili .Gause, Gause at mail, mail.house, house.gov, gov. Feel free to email me. I do my best to respond in a timely manner. It also just depends on how crazy things are here. But always happy to answer, any political questions that I can.
Yeah. I used to have an email like that, but it was an error.
Maybe one day. You never know. You could have another one.
I could have another one. Oh, geez.
We don't know. I hope that one day you are on the Hill and I maybe am, interviewing you, Congressman, or Senator. Who knows?
Goodness. Oh, God.
I have high hopes for you.
Oh, God. Help us, Lord. But let's see. We'll see.
We will see.
Let's see. Follow us at Black Voices on the Hill on Instagram. Follow us at WVBR FM News. Be sure to follow Nkili as well. Let's follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Visit us at our website at wvbr.com/Black Voices. Be sure to subscribe to us on Apple, Google, Spotify, Overcast. Tune in right here on WVBR 93.5 every Friday at 2 p.m. So today you can catch a rerun of an episode right now on WVBR.com. And every Tuesday at 11 a.m. is when the podcast releases. We'll see you next week, y'all. Shout out to my executive producers, Mike Sykes and Grace Fairchild. Be sure to tell Alexa, listen, Alexa, I want to hear Black Voices on the Hill. Peace out, family. Love you.